All right, hello again, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Frederica Whitfield. Republican presidential candidate Rick Perry says the Lafayette, Louisiana theater shooting is another example why he believes people should be able to take their guns to the movies. Here's what he said to Jake Tapper on today's State of the Union.
I will suggest to you that these concepts of gun-free zones are a bad idea. I think that you allow the citizens of this country who have been appropriately trained, appropriately backgrounded, know how to handle and use firearms to carry them.
I don't know that a law would have kept a gun out of the hand of the shooter in Lafayette, but you seem to be suggesting that a solution to the problem would be to allow patrons in the movie theater to bring guns with them into the movie theater.
I think that it makes a lot of sense to send the message across this country. If we believe in the Second Amendment and we believe in people's right to protect themselves and to defend themselves and their families, that to tell them that they cannot carry a weapon that they are legally obliged to carry, that they have been through the training for, makes sense to me.
That makes more sense than trying to keep the gun out of the hand of the person who had been involuntarily committed to begin with?
I didn't say that there's one more important than the other. Okay. I shared with you, I think that the laws are on the books to keep individuals, obviously, I think that's what's happened in these two cases, and we need to enforce the laws that are on the book.
All right, so let's talk about this. Here with me in studio, CNN legal analyst Philip Holloway, who is a former police instructor, and in Boston, CNN commentator and attorney Mel Robbins. All right, good to see both of you. So, Philip, let me begin with you because you, too, are an advocate of packing a weapon when going to the movies. Why?
Well, I certainly don't see a problem with it in general, but the fear of armed resistance could be the thing that deters someone from picking that particular target. Movie theaters are unique because they're dark and they're oftentimes loud. And if you go in there and you open fire, who knows what you're going to hit. And if you happen to have a firearm on you, it may not be the right thing to do to immediately resort to that because you cannot identify the shooter. So in principle, I don't have a problem with what Governor Perry said, but I don't think necessarily that resorting to a firearm in an active shooter situation in a movie theater under those circumstances is the correct first choice.
Because the governor said, that person needs to be appropriately trained. And what does that mean? Because what also comes with the response of when something happens and you are a licensed, gun owner, you have to have the wherewithal in order to assess. And now we're talking about assessing, just like police officers are, going through intense training about assessing when to use their weapon.
That's absolutely correct. Active shooter training is something that is very, very difficult. And even the best trained police officers engaging an active shooter in this situation, they will not take a shot, Fred, unless they know where their shot is going, they know who the shooter is, and that they know that a third party is not going to get hurt. So effectively, what that means is they're going to engage the person physically. They're going to get as close to them as possible, assuming they can identify the shooter in the darkness. And then only at close range would they consider using their firearm. They're more likely than not going to just simply overwhelm them and tackle them like we saw with the Ronald Reagan assassination attempt, for example.
So, Mel, how do you interpret and how do you see what Governor Perry is proposing and how Philip has chimed in?
Well, Frederica and Philip, great conversation. Good afternoon to both of you. It's interesting because this all dates back to a law that George H.W. Bush put into place in 1990 when they prohibited guns being brought into and around schools and punished it by up to 5 years in prison. And it's kind of spread across businesses, and businesses are well within their rights to establish gun-free zones on their premises. Now, interestingly, I actually kind of agree a little bit with Philip, where if you've gone through the process of getting a license to carry a concealed weapon, presumably, and let's put the emphasis on presumably you're in a state where you've gone through extensive amounts of training, you've been certified at a gun range, you've gone through safety classes, and we've given you that license because we believe as a society and as the government that you can conduct yourself responsibly now that you have this greater privilege. I think the problem is that we live in a country now where there's 300 million guns. I don't think there is anything called a gun safe zone anymore in this country. And to think that we should just hope and pray that there is a licensed concealed weapons holder in a movie theater that can act appropriately in an active shooter situation is putting the emphasis on the wrong thing. We have had over 100 laws enacted in the last 6 years that have loosened the requirements for gun ownership in this country. And I think we need to stop talking about gun-free zones and start talking about closing loopholes. I think we should look at what California has done. They just enacted a gun violence restraining order, because the truth is the guy that went in and killed these two beautiful young women in the movie theater and just bought it legally. And so there's got to be something not only that stops people that shouldn't have access to guns from buying them, but also gives neighbors, police, and family members the opportunity to seize them when somebody starts acting in a really
And I know you have a final thought if you want to jump in quickly.
What Mel said, acting appropriately with that firearm. If someone is in the movie theater armed and an active shooting situation takes place, you don't want that person acting inappropriately. You want them to seek cover and then to decide whether or not they have a shot that they can safely take. Otherwise, it can only make matters worse.
All right, Philip Holloway. Mel Robbins, thank you so much. This is just the beginning of that conversation. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks.